Well, hello and good evening, and a very warm welcome to a special program called Predicta on NewsX, powered by 1xBet. Today's IPL in 2023-24 action brings together Hardik Pandya-led Mumbai Indians. Yes, Hardik Pandya-led Mumbai Indians and Rajasthan Royals in the hot seat today. In fact, this is the 14th match of the day, and we are now joined by three of the eminent panelists today with us. Well, without further delay, I'm going to get in Sadanand Vishwanath, the man who was responsible for the 1985 Champions of Champions trophy for India. Also, we have Terry Blake, joins us from London. We also have one more special guest, David Brooks, joining us a little later in the day. But today, it's the day for Mumbai Indians and Rajasthan Royals. Well, let's see what the day looks like for our team today. Well, go on. I would like to get in Sadanand Vishwanath. Sadanand, what was your assessment of the game that happened yesterday, and what are you looking for today? Two questions put into one for you. Terry Blake? Terry Blake, are you there with us? Terry, can you hear us? Absolutely, but we'll have to get into your unmute mode so that... Yes.
Am I not?
Yes, now you're on. Go on, Terry Blake.
Okay. Well, I'm clearly not a very good pundit because I backed the wrong team yesterday. But it was indeed a close match. I think David Brooke has always been a better punter than I have. David, what did you make of yesterday's game?
Well, I mean, I said of the second match that my head said Chennai Super Kings, but my heart said Delhi Capitals, and I'm so glad that the heart won out. And it was wonderful to see Pant getting his half century and getting back and getting a winning match under his belt. So I was just really happy for the outcome, and also nice to see Prithvi Shaw back in the side as well. So lots of positives, and of course the crowd got a treat, didn't they? They got a treat at the end with Dhoni playing that cameo innings, rolling back the years. So I think it must have been it was a fantastic match from the crowd's point of view. It had everything, and 4 marks to Delhi Capitals for overtaking the Super Kings.
Well, absolutely. You spoke about the crowd yesterday. Somewhere today, the crowd ain't bad because we have the Wankhede Stadium. The pitch looks flattest track in India, and it is known for producing high-scoring affairs. Well, who can forget the World Cup matches here? But at the same time, the clash between Mumbai Indians and Sanju Samson's Rajasthan Royal. Total matches 109. Batting team that have won is 50. Team chasing has won 59 occasions. The highest is 235. The lowest is 67. Well, what do you make of it, David Brooks?
Well, as you say, it's a high-scoring ground. The boundaries are very short,
yes,
comparatively, aren't they? And I wonder whether the home advantage, with Mumbai Indians coming back home, will be sufficient to turn their fortunes around. I know that there's been so much chat on social media, and the pressure is piling up on new captain Hardik Pandya. And it's going to make it very interesting because home advantage has been a key factor so far in the tournament. Home sides tending to win. But the form team, Rajasthan Royals, it's great match in prospect. Very good match in prospect.
Well, very interesting. And you spoke about the crowd management. I'd like to get in Terry here. Terry, there's been a little upside upheaval in the Mumbai Indians camp because Hardik Pandya seemed to be having a tough time there. What do you make of that? If that same booing was happening in UK for one of the county matches, how would you deal with such situation?
Well, it's not easy to deal with. Of course, over here we have an interesting situation where Joe Root, when he comes into bat, gets booed, but all the crowd are really going is Root. So people get confused. I think the issue with Hardik Pandya is probably that he's switched teams, isn't it? And so
that's correct.
People who used to love him have now decided to hate him, and I'm afraid it's a shame. It's very hard to stop, I think. Perhaps as the season unfolds, it'll become forgotten after a couple of games. Looking at today's match, Rajasthan Royals have won both their matches batting first, whereas Mumbai Indians have lost both of theirs chasing. So I imagine both teams will want to bat first, even though it's a good chasing ground as well. So it's a fascinating game, I think.
Well, absolutely. Well, this is something which David Brooks will understand. David, remember 1994, Courtney Walsh was the skipper. Suddenly, Brian Lara took over. Couldn't happen. There was a lot of booing in his Antigua and Jamaica. And suddenly what happens? Courtney Walsh walks out with Brian Lara, keeps his hand around his shoulder and walks so that the home crowd is not agitated. You remember that series airing on your new network?
Indeed. We need to see what you're saying, Sunil, is we'd like to see Rohit Sharma offer the same gesture, take the pressure off Hardik today. Maybe when the ball was flying around the park in the Mumbai Indians last match, the camera kept panning to Rohit Sharma, and I don't know, some of the time he looked like he was gloating. I'm sure he wasn't, but he needs to make a gesture, to come out with him as Courtney Walsh did in '94, and just to say, look, this has my backing, and Rohit needs to get right behind Pandya and put the negative stuff, bury that, put it behind it. By the way, Sunil, talking of booing, David Warner used the booing to inspire his performances in the last Ashes. You know, he was booed all the way out, and he kind of used it to inspire him. Didn't always produce results, but he didn't let it get to him.
Well, that was an interesting point. Sadanand Vishwanath, if he's just going to be back with us soon, he's a man who's dealt with a little bit of booing, but he got adulation from everywhere. Let's move on to the star performers for the day. Ishan Kishan, Rohit Sharma, Naman Dher and Tilak Verma. That's a good ensemble for Mumbai Indians. What do you think of it, David Brooks?
Yeah, I mean, on paper it looks good. I mean, Verma was impressive in the first match. I mean, Tim David, he hasn't done anything yet. So, he's taking the Pollard role, isn't he? And he needs to step up today. Rohit, actually, his figures look good. He's been getting off to some decent starts and scoring at a decent clip. Ishan Kishan, he scores quickly, doesn't he? So a good performance from him today. But of course, my man, talking of star performers, the man that you like and I like, Chahal, is there with the ball for Rajasthan Royals to put an end to anything big from MI.
Well, absolutely. That's an interesting point. We also move our focus to the acceleration point. Usually it's the 7th over and the 14th over. That's where the bulk of the runs are scored. But in the past few games, you've seen the graph dipping down. I mean, for instance, they've been slow by 18 to 22% of the usual score. What would be the reason, David? I'm just not from a player's perspective, but from a statistician's perspective.
Well, I suppose it's when you've got the field restrictions are eased after the power play. Yeah, teams are getting a bit bogged down, aren't they? There, so that's why I come back to the point that the middle order and people like Tim David need to play their part. The fact that he hasn't clicked yet has meant that that the innings hasn't received the boost that it would do from the middle order. And of course, the skipper himself, he's starred briefly, but he needs to come in with a sizable innings today. That engine room at 5 and 6 needs to be there to ensure that there isn't that slowdown. You're right, because they need to post a decent score because, as you say, it's a high-scoring ground. So they can't afford any deceleration.
We also have, when you look at the Rajasthan Royals, you have Yashasvi Jaiswal, Sanju Samson, Riyan Parag, and Jos Buttler. Your main man from England, Jos Buttler. What do you make of that team and Jos's form? Is he still the boss, or the good days are behind him?
Before Terry weighs in with Buttler, because I know Terry's been watching him closely, I would say that on this ground he's got a good record. So maybe we'll see him come back to form today. He's under a lot of pressure though, because he had that miserable World Cup as captain, and he needs to show that he needs to put those bad memories of India behind him, which he managed to do in the South African T20. Jaiswal, of course, is on home ground, isn't he? Because he plays his domestic cricket here at Mumbai. So that augurs well, because if we see a big innings from him today, that will really put the pressure on Mumbai Indians if they do, as Terry says, win the toss bat first. And well, I was very impressed with Ryan Parag. He looked the real deal. And Sampson scoring runs in the first innings. It's a very good top order. The only one who hasn't produced yet, Shimron Hetmeyer, and he hasn't produced for West Indies recently either. So I think, given the fact that, I know Terry and you were talking a couple of days ago about how this is an audition for the World Cup. Well, Hetmeyer is currently out of the West Indies team. He needs to do something, produce something in the IPL to get himself back into the T20 World Cup on home ground in the Caribbean.
Well, very interesting point you made about Hetmeyer and largely for the West Indians, because it's very important that the West Indians usually score big when it comes to the franchise leagues and then make their way into the national team. Do you think this is, and this question is pointed to Terry, because he's been a part of the big association, foundation, and ECB. What do you think, Terry, is this a nice way of coming back into the national team by scoring big and then coming back?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Butler, I think, has had a little bit of time off after a heavy schedule ending in a dismal World Cup. And then he hasn't fired yet, but imagine if he fired today with Jaswal at the top of the order. He only needs a couple of good shots and he'll click back into gear. And once he does, he normally then starts to score heavily. So although Rajasthan Royals have done well without Butler contributing, I expect him, like Bairstow did yesterday, to finally get going.
Well, absolutely. That's an interesting thing. But also, the ones who don't start, like the West Indians, are you perturbed by the new phenomena that they paratroop inside the team after scoring one or two in consequential matches? Do you think it's unfair on the other part who play the domestic circuit all this while, toil it hard and then try to make it to the team? But here, some of the Caribbean guys just play the leagues and then get paratrooped.
Well, David should answer that one, really. I mean, I think it must be very hard sitting on the bench for a long time. One hopes that everyone will get a fair crack of the whip. But once the team starts playing really well, and provided there's no injuries or not a short gap between games, you can get left high and dry just in the nets. But that's not necessarily a bad place to be, because you're in the environment. If you're netting well, you're probably feeling quite confident. But there's nothing can beat being out in the middle.
Well, absolutely. Today's match, we have some of the best bowlers who are in the middle, and they're doing a good job. For Mumbai Indians, it is Akash Madhwal, capped 14 wickets in the last 8 matches with a bowling strike rate of 10.92 and an economy of 8.59. Piyush Chawla took 11 wickets in the last 10 matches, and definitely leave an impact with the experience and crucial situations we saw. Jasprit Bumrah, number 3, and Kodzi, number 4, the young South African pacer. David Brooks, what do you make of this 4-quartet?
Well, they all went round the park, didn't they? They got a severe mauling in the last match. So It's a question of whether they can put that behind them and, go again. I think they'll make a change. I think possibly the Englishman Luke Wood will come in to replace Mafaka, because he was very expensive. But no, you're right. Milani and Chawla, are good bowlers, and it's unusual to see Chawla being so expensive. It was a hammering, though, wasn't it? Sixes were raining,
absolutely,
thick and fast. So they're going to be relying on Bumrah. He's far and away got the best economy rate and the best average amongst those bowlers. So if Bumrah can strike early, and this, I'd like, he must fancy his chances with Butler in the opening duel. If he can strike early, that might give Mumbai Indians the edge on home soil.
Well, very interesting that the way things are coming out to us, and we must have a crack at something which is important, called the coaching part as well. Yesterday, Atul Vasan, the former Indian speedster, made a very interesting, pithy observation about getting the big names into the dugout. And today, we seem to be having the same. For Mumbai Indians, it's Mark Boucher. Then you have Kieran Pollard as the batting coach. The bowling coach is Lasith Malinga. Fielding coach is James. Again, for Rajasthan Royals, you have Kumar Sangakkara, and then assistant coach Trevor Penny, Shane Bourne, bowling coach. And that's how it is. Do you think the real thing is now the big blockbuster players and not just the ones who are good at coaching? Your views, David, and then I'll move on to our friend Terry.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to, I can't remember who it was talking about the mentor role. Was it when we were discussing that a few days ago? You know, it's an interesting, we haven't seen that role being used much outside the IPL. I guess you do get confidence from having the big names in the dugout with you as mentors or as part of the coaching team. I quite like what Atul said when he said that it was overblown the amount of coaches that you've got here. Ultimately, the players have to step up today, and there'll be pressure on certain individuals in the Mumbai Indians side. Doesn't matter who's in the dugout with you, the great Sachin or whatever. They still need to step up today. And I think player we haven't mentioned is absolutely key today, Sunil, and that would be Trent Boult. His ability to take wickets early on, again, could be a key factor. And, he's really shone out as still producing the quality, even though he's not on the international circuit for the moment. Well, he's still got the quality, still able to take the early wickets.
Very interesting to see Kieran Pollard in the dugout as the batting coach. But just a couple of months ago, he was actually playing at the SAT20. What do you make of that phenomenon?
England have seen something they like because they've engaged him as batting advisor. I think his role will be in the forthcoming World Cup. So clearly England think he can do a job there. And it remains to be seen if he can add some strength and conviction behind the rest of the Mumbai Indian side. Rohit Sharma won't need it, but maybe some of the other individuals would benefit from having Pollard alongside them.
Well, let's go to Terry and ask is this the phenomena that was created and introduced by England, getting a foreign coach for a particular field? Just to understand that when you go and play in Pakistan, you have Mushtaq Ahmed and Saqlain Ahmed as your spin bowling department coaches. And when you go and play in Sri Lanka, you have the Sri Lankan players. Is this a new phenomena or it's been happening for long? Your views?
Well, it's been happening for a while. Of course, England famously have mainly overseas coaches anyway in football as well as in cricket. So we had Duncan Fletcher, Andy Flower, Trevor Bayliss, and now Brendan McCullum for the Test match team. And Matthew Mott is of course an Australian who coaches the white ball team. Going back to what we were saying about the slightly overblown looking support staff, I find it interesting that someone like Trevor Penny, a brilliant fielder, is an assistant coach, but they also have a fielding coach as well. You wonder whether that's strictly necessary. And I think Jonty Rhodes is also an assistant coach, one of the best fielders in the world. You thought you could double up a few roles, but I think you're right. I think it's for names associated. There's plenty of money around to bring people in for short-term assignments. And I think it's obviously a role that these ex-players love to have, dipping in and out of these various franchises. And if you can get a 1% edge out of one of these coaches for a particular game, then it's all worthwhile.
Well, absolutely. You're a commercial man. You'll talk commercial sense, getting the best return on investment, especially with the big names. Well, last question. Who are you backing today? Because David seems to be getting everything right. What's your prediction today? Terry, come on.
I think Mumbai Indians will manage to win the toss, bat first, and post a big enough score to fend off the Rajasthan Royals and start and launch their campaign. But I wouldn't put much money on either way.
Absolutely. Don't worry, David. David, you seem to be getting 90% everything right. Where's your money today?
Okay. Like Terry, a bit of caution today because there's a lot of variables here, not least the toss.
Right.
I'm going to go for the Royals. They're on a winning run. okay, they're away from home. They won't know the conditions, but they've got players who are in form, and Jeswell will know this ground.
Terry, name the team. Sorry, David, go on. Name the team.
Well, I hope that Rodman Powell gets to go today. I'd like to see him take the number 7 position, because I think, when they put Ashwin up the order for the Royals, it kind of worked. You wouldn't want to rely on that as a strategy.
Is this Rajasthan?
Yeah, for Rajasthan Royals. So I hope that Rodman Powell does get a game, because he's been on the bench so far. So I would go for the Royals to win. And just because the pressure on the home skipper is going to be so intense today, is how he responds to that. I mean, Sunil, you know Hardik Pandya well. How will he respond to this amount of pressure in front of the Mumbai crowd?
Well, the countdown has already begun. 5, 4. I could take your answer as Rajasthan Royals. Well, if that's yes, you're going to nod. And if that's the answer, very rarely you find 2 Englishmen disagreeing on a team, unless it's Manchester United and Liverpool. But that's all we had time for today.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.